Good morning. Thanks for coming out on this rainy day and being here. So this year we're looking at an overall theme of living our values in the world. Living our values in the world. Last year we worked with the idea of creating a world that works for all, and so in order to create a world that works for all, we have to have values that we live and apply in this world. So it's sort of an extension of our theme from last year. And in order to do that, this month we're looking at the core of what we as religious scientists believe, what we teach, what is our core set of values that we're looking at. So we're going to be starting today looking at the first 4 chapters of the Science of Mind magazine. There's a long history and tradition in religious science of kind of taking this month of January to get back to basics, is what it's often been called. And I love the idea of getting back to basics because oftentimes we stray in our lives and we forget stuff, and you know, we need to sometimes come back to that groundedness. I know my friend Luke over there calls it getting back to, we have our football metaphors of blocking and tackling. I mean, you know, football comes down to blocking and tackling and running and throwing, you know, and so am I doing that right? When I was a hardcore bicyclist, I would come back every year to how does my bike fit? Is the bike in good shape? I'd rebuild the bike. I'd relook at how I was on the bike and stuff like that. Get back to the basics, knowing that if I had my basics down, then the season would unfold well. And if I hadn't taken the time for doing that, I would be working with stuff that I hadn't addressed, during that, and it would continue to magnify. So we're looking at our back to basics and how we apply that. So we begin by looking at the very first chapter of the Science of Mind. And Fenwick Holmes was Ernest Holmes' brother, and for those who are new to this, Ernest Holmes was the founder of this teaching of Science of Mind. Fenwick Holmes, in his book about Ernest, said, in his textbook, Ernest taught that everyone is a center in the divine mind, a point of God-conscious life, love, truth, and action, that the invisible passes into the visible through our faith in it. He himself had passed through questioning to belief, through belief by practice, and through demonstration to faith, and now he had arrived at conviction, a realization of the presence. So that's the consciousness in which he wrote the textbook, is this conviction, is this real realization of the presence. Not just I hope it does, I'm not sure if it does, I even have faith in it, but it's actually, I know it. I know it. And so that's where I would love us to move in our values, is we know what our values are, and we know and stand with those values in that sense of conviction. So the first chapter of the book is simply called The Thing Itself. I've always loved that name, The Thing Itself. And Fenwick goes on to say that Ernest considered that Plotinus was a Neoplatonic Greek philosopher, that Plotinus's concept of man as a microcosm who embraces the qualities of all orders of creation provides a rational explanation of and this is the quote from Plotinus, of the radiation of all things from God and their ultimate return to him. And the first emanation being the nous, which is a Greek word, N-O-U-S, or the thing in itself. The thing in itself. And the thing in itself, which also, by the way, is talked about by Kant, Immanuel Kant, and also by the Hindu mystic Sri Aurobindo, who Ernest Holmes studied later in his life. The thing itself is that which exists prior to sensory perception. It's that first self-existent cause. It doesn't come from anywhere. It's not going to go anywhere. It is. And its isness is what we experience. And then from that, everything else emanates. So all of our sensory perception, all of our experience of this world emanates. Plotinus also went on to say, and this is also, Ernest quotes part of this in the Science of Mind textbook, I do not argue. I contemplate. And as I contemplate, I let fall the seeds of thought into the mirror of the mind, which becomes the mirror of matter. I let fall the seeds of thought into the mirror of mind, which becomes the mirror of matter. Plotinus had this wonderful imagery of the mirror, and he says that we know that the images in the mirror are not real because we can see the mirror. But what if we couldn't see the mirror? What if the mirror was so big and so vast that all we saw was just the images and we thought they were real? And so that's what we play with. I love it. This kind of gets played out in for those of you who have watched Harry Potter or read the books on Harry Potter, there's a wonderful point where he comes into a room which has a mirror which shows whatever you desire. And he knows it's not real, but he loves to look at these images. In this case, it's his parents. He desires that family connection. And his teacher, Dumbledore, comes in and says, the happiest person in the world would walk in here and just see a reflection of himself. Okay? And so we look in the mirror, and the mirror reflects back to us our own thoughts. So this comes to the first of the core teachings that Ernest talks about. Thought is creative. Thought is creative. And then he goes on to talk about the nature of this infinite presence, because it's good to know what the nature of it is. And he says the nature of this is that the divine plan is one of freedom. Bondage is not God ordained. One of my favorite quotes out of the Science Mind textbook. The divine plan is one of freedom. Bondage is not God ordained. So wherever we feel bound or limited or in any way not fully expressing who we are, it is not God's agenda that we feel that way. We have self-created that or allowed others to create that around us. So freedom is the agenda. You know, I love sometimes we want to go, what's God's will for this aspect? And you know, I've seen people who have this idea that God has a plan that, you know, okay, you know, in this part of your life you're going to do this, and then you're going to do this, and then you're going to do this. And what he's saying is, no, there's no plan. The plan is freedom. We get to express and discover who we are. We have the freedom to do that. And just like little kids who get to express, you know, who they are, sometimes we fall down and skin our knees, right? Yeah? And that's okay. It's just part of the learning process. There's nothing wrong. There's no good or bad judgment about that. We get to play in that. And then he introduces the concept of that the universe is one of love, this deep, infinite love, and then one of law, this all-pervading law. And he goes on to say, well, this is one of also the deepest statements in it. This is the core of the teaching. He says, we approach love through law. We want to experience and be fully in that and aware of our oneness with this divine love. We already are in it, by the way. We don't have to earn our way to it. We're in it. We're here. You've already arrived. You know, when your GPS unit, you know, thing in your car, your navigation system says you have arrived, okay? You have arrived at the love of God already when you were born, before you were born. But we approach that love through law. The law is that process of creativity. That law is the process of, the law is the law of cause and effect. And what we put out into the universe is what comes back to us. And I love, the metaphor that I love for this is the movie from Bill Murray with Groundhog's Day, where he keeps getting to do the day over and over and over again, and he becomes in alignment with the law, which leads him to love. When he finally realizes that as I put out good, as I put out love, as I put out, you know, the highest and best of me, it's going to create more and more and more of that until he finally transcends the day. Okay? And that's what we're here for. That's what the law is designed to do, is to guide us lovingly, perfectly, impersonally, by the way, into the experience of that love. When the young man asked Jesus, what do I have to do to experience life eternal? The first answer that Jesus gives him is, follow the laws. Follow the commandments. So that's the first place, that's our foundation. That's our getting our structures in place, if you will, getting our foundation in place. Am I living in alignment with the law? And in order to live in alignment with the law, we have to understand what is the law, what's the nature of the law, how does it work? Okay? And so that's a lot of the study of religious science is the study of these principles and how do they work. The law, first of all, is impersonal. And by that, it plays no favorites. It doesn't like this person better than this person. It plays no favorites whatsoever. How it works for one person is how it works for all. So there's no personalness to that law. It also has no agenda. The law does not care what we put into it. Just like we use the metaphor of the light on a projector, movie projector, doesn't care what movie you run in front of it. It's just going to be the light. And so that's how the law is. It's just being its nature. It doesn't care how we use it. Now we have caring, right? There's certain results and uses of the law that I like better than others. Okay? But the law has no agenda, and it's impersonal. It works for all of us. Ernest also, throughout this chapter, and actually throughout the whole textbook, says this whole process is simple. We try and make it too complex, but it's actually very simple. He says there's nothing supernatural, which is above natural or outside the law, about it. There are no miracles in the sense of a miracle being something that transcends the law or that operates outside of the law. There's no miracles. Just like we may perceive something as being miraculous, just like if a person from 200 years ago was time traveled forward, walked into our room and watched us turn on the lights, okay, they would experience that as miraculous because they don't know how to do that, right? But we know how to do it, and we know how to follow that law. We know that when we flip the switch, we're following the law of electricity. We may not consciously think that, but that's what we're doing. We're working with that law of electricity. There's nothing miraculous about it, but there's times that we have experiences that seem miraculous, but it's simply a growing edge for us to understand the law. Everything must follow the law of the universe. The next thing in is that our mind, our individualized mind, our own mind is an individualization of the one infinite mind. You and I don't have a mind, we use the mind. So if somebody says you're mindless, that's a good thing. Okay? We don't have a mind, we use the infinite mind. We individualize it, we personalize it, we bring it down and focus it on what we want. It's a wonderful quote from Nietzsche that we read. Life itself values through us when we determine values. So we give it the direction. And we create as it does through thought, through contemplation, as Plotinus said, as Troward says. What we contemplate, what we put our attention on, what it is that we hold in our minds is what we create in our lives. He talks about creative thought as prayer. And he says prayer is a movement of thought within the mind of the one praying for a specific purpose. See, Ernest is also very big on that this is a practical teaching. It's not to sit here and go, how many angels can dance on the head of a pin? It's to say, how can I use this to create a life that more closely resembles the life that my soul, my highest being, my deepest self calls for it to be? How can I create that life? How can I use this process? Because that's what the universe is trying to do, wanting to do, desiring to do through us, is to create that life that resonates as our authentic life. So he goes on to say then that when we use our minds have two aspects. It's the same mind, but it has two aspects. The first one is the objective or conscious mind, which chooses. So we choose our values. We choose what we want to create. We make those choices. And then the second one is the subjective or unconscious mind, which follows and creates what it is that we choose. And it's hugely powerful, the subjective mind. I remember one of my teachers equated it to a little child who, when you say, go do this, it says, okay. Go do that, okay. And it doesn't know that it can't do it. It doesn't have that consciousness. Our subjective mind taps into the infinite power of the universe. And when we say, go create this, it does. How many people have been wanting snow for a while? And we got it. We created it yesterday, right? You know, we were talking, Chris and I were talking about Dalton's birthday was the 6th, and they had these snow placemats and stuff out there. I've talked to people who said, I haven't seen snow in Reading for years, and I so would love to. And so what do we get? We get snow. I'm not saying we necessarily all there created that weather, but there is a consciousness. So our mind creates. We have limitless power to create. Limitless power to create. Ernest says that when we learn to trust the universe, we shall be happy. Isn't that great? When we learn to trust the universe, we shall be happy. If I have an unhappiness in my life, it's because somewhere I don't trust the universe. We'll be happy, prosperous, and well. To learn to think is to learn how to live, for our thoughts go into a medium that is infinite in its ability to do and to be. Man or people, by thinking, can bring into their experience whatever they desire if they think correctly and become a living embodiment of those thoughts. This is not done by holding thoughts, but by knowing the truth. So I don't have to hold a thought. I don't have to grasp that thought. I have to simply keep in the truth. In the truth. Recently, the movie Rogue One. I don't know how many of you saw it, and I won't talk about it for spoiler alerts or anything like that. But there's a character in there who is constantly working with an affirmation. He says, I am in the Force, and the Force is in me. I am in the Force, and the Force is in me. I am in the Force, and the Force is in me. And that's an affirmation. That's a constant reminder of truth. He is speaking truth to himself over and over and over again, which is one of the things Emma says, speak truth rapidly and clearly. We speak truth to ourselves. What is that highest truth? So that's how we look at the thing itself. Excuse me, I got lost here. No, I didn't get lost here. So this week, what I want to invite us to do is to first of all notice what your thinking has created. Just notice it. And here's the clue. Everything around you, everything that is in your life, your thinking has created. Everything that's in my life, my thinking has created. And you may say, well, yeah, but some of that, in my mom or my parents, the society, and yet I still allowed that to happen. I still moved into alignment with that. Everything around me, I've created. And so just notice where it has created freedom, where I have the experience of joy and happiness and wonderfulness. Is that a word? Wonderfulness? It is now, I just made it up. And where I have a feeling of bondage or limitation or lack. And I've created that. And that's the good news, bad news. And the good news is, if I've created what I don't like, I can create again. I can create again. And then secondly, pick an area where you'd like to experience greater freedom. Pick an area where you'd like to experience greater freedom and contemplate that freedom as your new reality. Sit in contemplation of that. As Ernest said in that previous quote, we think correctly and we become the living embodiment of the thought. So it's not enough to just have the thought. We also have to embody the thought. Yesterday we did, or this weekend, Friday night and all day Saturday, we did an intentions retreat. And it was a wonderful process, and people immersed themselves into what does my intention look like and feel like. We had Kathleen Patton sitting at the back, supporting people and tapping it literally into their body, doing the tapping process. And we became that thought. One of the ways we did that was we looked at what's the intention I want to create for this year, and then projected ourselves forward to the end of the year, saw ourselves already having accomplished that or completed that or being that, whatever it is, and then turned around and looked back and said, now how did I get there? How did I get here? And so I'm already then creating from the point of view of already being here. Already being here. When the two religious science organizations, International and United, were talking about coming together, the adults spent a lot of time talking about coming together and how to work that out. The teens, who were miles ahead of the adults, just said, oh, we're together. We'll take all our finances, because there was a whole thing about what do we do with our money. They took the finances from the International organization and the United organization and pulled into one. And they said, we're no longer ICSL or UCSL, we are WeCSL. No longer I or you, we. They were already living in this vision. They were already living in the oneness of it. Okay? And so can we become, as we contemplate, we become what it is that we want to be. So I invite you this week to spend time contemplating that in that area. Let yourself become that freedom and understand that you're backed up by the universe, that you're supported by the universe because it wants your freedom. That's his whole agenda. So I want to close with a quote from Ernest that says, the mind we discover within us is the mind that governs everything. The capital M, mind that governs everything. When I look within me, I'm tapping into the infinite mind. When we talk about going deep, where I'm going deep into is deeper into spirit. This is the thing itself, and we should recognize its simplicity. Let's take a breath and move into prayer. And there is only one. There's only that one life. A life of freedom, a life of joy, a life of great good. a life of happiness. That life is all that there is. That life is all there is. And I am one of that. The I that I speak is for each of us. I am. Each of us is one of that life right here, right now. Each of us already is immersed in the infinite love of God. Each of us already is immersed in the joy, the good, the happiness, the prosperity, the health, the joy of the divine. We are that already. And so moving that thought into form, into a direction, for a purpose, I speak my word that each of us experiences that truth, the truth of our being, the truth of the universe, to a greater and greater degree than ever before, that there is that within us which opens up and lets go of any places where we have felt in bondage, where we have felt in lack or limitation, any places that we have felt tied down, tied up, imprisoned, and allow ourselves the freedom of who we truly are. The freedom to be in love, in joy, in prosperity, in health, in creativity, in wisdom, in beauty, because that is who we truly are. And so I speak that word, that our divine nature, we say yes to it. We allow it to express through us ever more fully. And in gratitude for the joy that this brings to each and every one of us, and the joy that then expresses and extends out into the world and radiates out from us, and for the spirit that is in that radiation, in that emanation, and is in, through, and as all of this, I am so grateful. So grateful. I open my heart to that spirit in gratitude. And then I speak this word into that law that knows how to create it, how to move it into form, and I let it do its work. I let go of the word and let the law do the work. And it does, because that's its nature. And so it is done, and so it is. Thank you.